Tonight I want to talk to you about a plant that I believe has horribly been misused and abused, um, not because of its addictive qualities, but because of the bad press it's gotten, lack of respect it's been shown um, by just many irresponsible people who, are looking to have a fun time, but end up usually having a very bad experience, and then willfully wanting to put their friends through the same horrible experience and thinking this is fun. And unfortunately, it's sad, it's not fun, and because of this plant has now been made illegal in many states. Luckily here where I live in California, it's been protected. It is illegal to sell to minors. And if you haven't guessed by now, the plant I'm talking about is um, los ojos de la pastora, also known as Maria pastora, or um, better known as Salvia Divinoram, um, or just Salvia. And I'm sure everyone is familiar with what I'm talking about at this point. You've seen the videos of kids tripping out, jumping out windows, writhing on the floor, having horrible trips and experiences while their friends laugh at them. Um, but excuse me as my air conditioning kicks on, but unfortunately many haven't experienced or used this plant um, or seen the potential for its use in shamanic and mystical practices, and the very few that have, what they've written about it is pretty obscure and not there's not a whole lot about it. There's just not a whole lot about it. There's men like Terrence McKenna. Um, there's a few other men, Ross Heaven, who's also written a lot about San Pedro, but he's written a book about Salvia Divinoram and its use in shamanic practices. But this plant is a mystery. It's only been studied by the scientific community, I think, for less than 60 years, and the Mazatec Indians say that they inherited its use and its practice and their shamanic use of los ojos de pastora, the eyes of the shepherdess. The Mazatec Indians have said they inherited it from their grandparents. It's only been used in their tradition for 100 years, maybe a little more than 100 years, 200 years tops. And so this plant just kind of showed up out of nowhere, and it is the most powerful hallucinogen to mankind. It doesn't act as your normal entheogens, such as mushrooms, LSD, psilocybin, which are mushrooms, mescaline, which is your cactus, is your peyote, your San Pedro, or like DMT, which is, your ayahuasca, which is what your body produces, which is found in animals and almost every plant. In varying amounts and quantities in this world. So all these substances act on your serotonin and other receptors, whereas Salvia Divinorum reacts on a totally different receptor of the brain. Anyway, I'm not a scientist, so enough of that. But my experience with Salvia first began probably about 7 years ago. I didn't know what I was getting into. I was with two friends at a friend's house in his backyard. It was nighttime, and we had just been hanging out. And a friend said he had gotten some salvia, and at that time I had known very little about it. I heard one other friend talk about it, and I didn't think much of it. It was like, it's just some substance that's sold at a smoke shop. What could it be? And so my friend brought out a bong and asked me if I wanted to take a few bowls, and so, I have, growing up, used a lot of cannabis, and throughout my life, my views of cannabis have changed, I don't see it as just something for recreation. I see it as medicine at this point in my life. But back in the days, it was more of a recreational thing, and I used it a lot. So I took a few large bowls of salvia, and then within seconds, actually, of that second bowl of salvia, I was transported to another realm. Like, I can't explain it. For those who've done LSD or mushrooms or DMT, DMT would be the closest probably experience to salvia that I've had, because LSD and mushrooms don't necessarily transport me personally into other realms. I'm still in this world, in this dimension. You know, my perception's changed. My eyes are open in a different way under those ethnogens. But in salvia, I didn't even remember I had smoked. I didn't remember I had smoked anything or even used it. I was in another realm, and the best way I could describe it it was like a Lego world. It was colorful, and there were these beings that all I can describe them closeless like was like these Lego characters. But the way I got there was this wheel. I got sucked into this wheel that was turning and just turning, and everything in the room was being pulled into this wheel, I remember. And then I was just there. I was there in this dimension, and these beings didn't seem evil, but they didn't seem good, you know. And I remember them distinctly beginning to speak to me, and I remember them telling me that everything that I believed was real was an illusion, wasn't real. They began to tell me that the grass, my house, the sky, the air I breathe, Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, and they went through the list, all these things, my mother, my father, the food I eat, my dog, you know, my grandparents, my friends, everything was an illusion, was created for them, for their pleasure and for their enjoyment. And everything that I knew as being real wasn't real, including myself. And that they were done with this game, and so they were going to start taking everything apart. And I saw everything in my life starting to dismantle and being taken apart. And I started being taken apart. And as I was being taken apart, I remember them saying also God was also an illusion, and that this was all a game. And I remember as they were taking me apart, it was very painful. I could feel it, and it was not a good feeling. And I remember just when I heard them say God was an illusion, that was when I reacted. And with everything in me, I remember I reacted, and I didn't believe that. Like, I could believe everything else was an illusion, and I almost felt like I knew that, and I had always known that, and something felt so familiar about this place. But when they said God was an illusion for whatever reason, I couldn't let go of that concept, and I fought it. And as I fought it, I remember that's when everything started to come back. Everything started to become normal, but not normal. And I remember the wheel appeared, and I got pulled back into the wheel, and it was like a stretching process, and I was being stretched and pulled, and slowly, like, everything else became pulled back, you know, from the wheel, like back into normality, I guess is the best way of describing it. And it took me probably a good 10 minutes after that. Like, I remember seeing my friends and not, like, trusting them at first. Just like, it was such a real experience. It was probably one of the most real experiences of my life. It seemed so real. I think that was what was so scary about it and so troubling, was it seemed so real and so familiar, and yet frightening, you know, because it was just in that reality I was being told that everything I knew of my reality was an illusion, and the fact that it felt so real at the time, and even for days and weeks and months after that. I mean, it's been 7 years and I still remember the experience so vividly, and it really freaked me out. I didn't ever approach salvia again for probably a good 5 years. It freaked me out. You know, I had done mushroom, I had done LSD prior to that many times. And after that experience, you know, I had used mushrooms and LSD many times, but salvia, to this day, I still have never used anything, including DMT, that has pulled me into another world quite like salvia. And I've used it times since, but that first experience was was unlike anything I've experienced before, and yeah, I mean, like, my words can't do it justice, but salvia is definitely a plant that will transport you somewhere else, and should be used with respect. I've used it since with respect and with fear and trepidation, but also I've learned a lot from it. I've learned a lot from that plant, and yeah, I'm glad that in my state it hasn't been made illegal. I'm glad the federal government hasn't been able to make it illegal because they just don't know what to do with it. They can't classify it. Um, it's just unlike any other plant and ethniogenic substance known to mankind. It totally reacts on the brain differently than your classical ethnogens, and so I hope that more responsible people use it wisely in their journeying and their learning, and also realizing that all these substances, these ethnogens, are not they're not the end result. You know, they're not the goal. And what you learn with these substances always should be questioned and contemplated and absorbed and reflected upon. And nothing you encounter while in other dimensions with the use of these substances should be taken as truth or at face value without thorough examination, thorough contemplation, and thorough testing. One must use a lot of wisdom and discernment when using ethnogens in a spiritual manner and as a tool. But when used responsibly and as a tool for spirituality and spiritual awakening, I don't think there's anything more powerful other than meditation. So yeah, blessings, blessed love. I wish you all the best. Shalom. Shavuot Tov.